See, one of the things that I must tell you is that if you sense any a tone of desperation in me, because I have visited home and I know what is the reality, the people, like all shared spaces in South Asia, when you have this kind of a violence, there are people who are silently suffering. The relationship they have across communities. I know I have heard and talked to many of them. I must tell you that they're friends, college friends, marital relationship, how those people suffer and how those people in relief camps suffer. And there are a lot of angers. I must tell you, and I must also share with you that I have never seen certain sections of the Meiteis being so radicalized and so angry. And I know I don't want to talk about it now. But any radicalization is not good, neither for the society itself, that community, or their relationship, the other community with whom they have relationship. This radicalization, do not think that it only happens among the Meitei. When you're too obsessed with your identity, a parochial, exclusivist, sectarian thought-guided identities, you are bound to destroy what is essentially various shared spaces. That must be the warning. Any South Asian scholar knows this when this kind of violence happens. I have seen people. I'll tell you one personal experience in the recent times. One Kukis fellow whose wife is a Meitei, whose house was burned, and he hugged me and said, "Tamo, I don't have a home." And it hurts me. Remember this. And I have heard one Churachandpur Meitei girl crying. I can show you the video recording of my communication in a public hearing held in Delhi. I said, first thing I reminded her, I said, your pain, when I say I understand, I will not be saying that I can feel you. No, I can only sense some part of it. Your pain is unique. But I said, please remember, just as you were narrating about your experience in Churachandpur and how your house, she doesn't have a home anywhere in the valley. I said, remember that other communities have similar stories. When you guys, this pain is understood with each other, that is where the humanity will return. Do not think that your pain is the only pain. This is a Meitei university teachers telling a girl who was crying, and some people will use that narrative for some other purpose. For me, I was reminding him because I have worked on partisan violence for 10 years in an institute in Delhi. I know how these things have worked. I was a public hearing jury member on Gujarat violence. Remember this, behind the politics, there are people who are worried about what is going to happen in this monsoon, in the next year. This fear is there, but there are political games to achieve. That's a different story. Now, let me go into this one. When you're thinking about resource and way ahead, let me share with you this. When I'm speaking, I am not speaking as a Meitei position. And I'm also trying to tell you this one. There's something called in academic literature, we call it reflexivity. I check myself how much of my statement is coming from subconscious, unconscious, whatever it is, or being a Meitei as my location. I constantly fight back. Remember this. This is the only way to understand the others. But beyond this, let's accept one part of the politics. When you think, when you can vulgarize Foucault, and when you follow a dictum as if facts are not facts, you're familiar with this statement about the right-wing groups. Facts are not facts. When you know that the nation as a word in Rabindranath Tagore's own word, he never used this word nation, trying to show that it is external. On a treaty which is signed, and it gets translated, how that English word nation, what kind of meaning it will acquire. Why is it that Tagore resisted from using the word nation? Look at Ashish Nandi's work. Look at Tagore's work. Why he's so antithetical. So just simply because the nation is used and so forth, and whose fact is anyway facts are not facts will not work. Whatever the treaty that has been mentioned before me, you must know what is that treaty would mean. There's no time for me to speak here. Convenient way of projecting what is presented as a fact will collapse if you engage with an academic, authentic engagement. If you want to do it, please organize a separate seminar on what is history, what is fact, how history is written, and what are those documented issues in the archival material. Do not pick and choose. Try to understand. That's one. Any history. I am the first one who says that some of the Meiteis suffer from imperial nostalgia. They need to reinvent themselves. Check my writings for the last 20 years. Do not write history with the mainstream kind of an approach. You need to have a thinking of the subaltern perspective when you write history. I have said that anachronistic assumptions of the nation state and looking at India and Manipur's history will not work. But how it gets crystallized at a certain point of time, what was the nature of the power structures, what is the nature of the relationship among people and communities, one must be able to honestly look at it so that we can imagine ourselves of a future. Now, you said it selectively use facts, resources, look at it. You have been using forest laws and forest dwellers. Remember that. Meiteis were dependent on forests like many communities in the Northeast. Check documents from 1913, from 1936 report, forest report created by the then government. You will see that Meiteis depended on forests, and those forests were also identified. Because of the urbanization, you live out of it. Do not think that simply because one is a tribal and the livelihood is derived from there. Under Forest Right Act, it is for those people whose livelihood is dependent on forests. Not all tribals, which Kaka calls it the colonial categories. We are primitive, we are backward, is something that has been challenged, including by the tribal scholars, because it is a pejorative, it creates a false self-image about, your self-esteem is destroyed. There was a committee formed by Government of India Tribal Affairs in 2014, and it has submitted a report saying that you must remove this phrase called primitive traits. This is pejorative. You do not fall into exogenous categories to define yourself. Now you can see series of these forest acts being declared. You are juxtaposing facts. Remember that the first reserve forest was declared in 1913 in Manipur. Before the Indian Forest Act 1927 comes into operation. And many of these reserve forests which has been declared is in 1966. This is before 371 comes into being. So saying that under 371, you cannot declare is a retrospective reading. You can't do that. 1966 Act declared it. 71 comes later. And there are, who's an assistant settlement officer, you pick and choose one part of a particular proviso in that act and live out deliberately, which is there all in the national newspaper, selective truths. You don't even read convenient. You think the resources in the hill cannot be used by the state. You rely on the judgment of Justice Shishak. You only caught that. Funny thing is, my dear, that particular judgment that you are relying has been set aside by Supreme Court. None of these honest people do not quote that one. They keep on quoting in Shishak judgment saying that government doesn't have a right over these resources. And that was set aside by Supreme Court. Is never going to be copied. This selective, deliberate propagandist discourse must stop. Lot of things have been said, and this will come up. You can't press truth for a long, long time. These documents will come up. I have seen many of them. Now, what is this equitable distribution? I said nobody can deny that there could be differential developments in different areas of the state. And I'm using this deliberately because you do it if you think that we can go ahead. Instead of communalizing the development discourse, please do an objective assessment. Number one, ask any economist in this world, and including the within Kuki tribes or Apaite, anybody who's trained in economics, you read what is the factors of topography, demographic features, law and order situations, the neo-patrimonial economic structures. These are the objective, non-communalized patterns to see if there is any development differential among people and the places. It must be addressed. It must be definitely addressed, but do not communalize the discourse. When the tribal elites flag off these issues, I'll give you one example. In the recent time, how people turn and twist this propaganda game that has been going on. I said the tribal MLAs will flag off this issue just around the election or just before the election. I said, I'll give you a classic example. The example was happened on 24th August, 2021. 24th August, 2021. The last session of the then 11th State Assembly. One tribal MLA posed about development distributions and allotment of fund and utilization. Now that has been used as if I have told a lie in the propaganda videos that I have seen. This is the same example that I was giving. That was before the election, the last assembly session of the 11th State Assembly. That was the proof. And that was not part of the debate on the budget. It was called a star question in the parliamentary language. And he was asking two questions. You know what was the question he was raising? By showing all those disbalances in the budget of the earlier from 18 onwards, he was citing, and he said, in the floor of the assembly, he was asking the tribal ministers, tribal and hill affairs minister. He said, one, did you take into confidence the member of the hill area committee about these issues? Why did you not consult us? That tribal minister is a tribal MLA. He was asked, did you take into confidence the rest of us in the tribal area committee? That was one of the questions. Check the videos. It's recording available. Now, second question he raised, did you put up these issues in the cabinet meeting because you are the cabinet minister? Now, you communalize this today. And I'm asking why they did not pose this kind of a question when the budget was presented and the debate happens. And today my solution, go ahead, is this suggestion. Please ask and demand together that you form a committee, a high-level committee, preferably people not from the state. Do not allow any state people involved. If you think you can't trust each other, involve outsiders and do an objective assessment of the topographical features. What is its role? What is the role of the old planning system? How it doesn't translate on the ground? What is the role of the neo-patrimonial economic structures? What is the law and order situation? You remember that the terrains of the hills have been the theater of armed conflict for 40, 50 years. Remember this. And remember also that you are comparing city, Imphal, which accommodates roughly 36% of the entire population of the state. This is good development patterns. If you're genuinely talking about redistribution of wealth, please follow that up. Do not communalize the debate. Check it out. And under neo-patrimonial structure, you will see how the elites exploit this, be that Meiteis or be that so-called tribal. Check their wealth. Please do that, elites. If you like the Sacha Commission report, check how many of them get access. You will find it out one, which is done by a political scientist, non-Manipuri. He said, decision-making bureaucratic structures, massive presence of the tribals, and the political structures dominated by the Meiteis is a strange dynamics nowhere found in India. When you think about tribal marginalization, take Nagaland as an example. Eastern Nagaland, how many of them get access to the bureaucracy of that state? How many of them get access to the decision-making in the political structure of the cabinet, and so on and so forth? You compare the same thing in Chhattisgarh, you compare the same thing in Assam, do everywhere. Check the indexes of human development indexes, of literacy rate, or mortality rate. Any criteria, check it. This false narrative and propagandist narrative, if you're genuinely interested in redistribution of goods and services, please do an objective statement. Please demand, including former committee like Sacha, and see how much of the socio-economic status of different communities in Manipur, and then development differential patterns in the various areas. And I am saying it, I am there to say this, please do not have a Manipuri member. You want to include tribal, please do that. From outside, from the Native Americans, famous economists from the United States, call them Christian American professors, economics, put them in that one. You want somebody from the Catholic, put them there and investigate. And you will see what is the truth and communalization. And I'm saying this, once you do that, come what may, let's face it, instead of communalizing and doing this, last point, what to go ahead, blame game. If I say something, Meitei will say something, Kukis will saying, I'm saying it because Meitei. I'm saying it again, please make it sure that there is a court monitor inquiry committee. I'm saying this as a Meitei. Make it sure that the commission is not a political tool. Make it a court monitor inquiry, enforceable inquiry, and check the number of violences, where it began, who burned the houses first, how was the reaction, which elements were used in the entire process. Remember this, Indian Army's deployment regiment names get access by Kukis. None of the Meitei get that access. How did they get that access? You're talking about security force involved. I'm saying that you have collapsed Manipur police by accusing of communalism. You are doing the same thing to Indian Army. You're doing to this national institutions have been jeopardized. Stop that. It is for everybody in this country. I'm asking to anybody whom outside the state, if the disclosure of the army's deployment, their regiment names and commanding officers, had it happened anywhere in this country, do you think that the defense expert would have kept quiet? Please tell me this. Why is that everybody kept quiet? Why that particular thing shared in many of these propaganda sites have been withdrawn later on? Who supplied that information? You look into that. I'm saying it, whoever is the element, including among the Meiteis, please find out, fixed responsibility and punish them. And make it, to do that, go ahead, please form an inquiry committee which is monitored by Supreme Court. I dare to say this. So developmental issues, please include professors from the America Christian and let it be done with the mainstream. Do it, investigate, and see what is the nature of the development patterns. And check it, see
Thank you, Professor.
all of them, then only then we can go ahead. Last but not the least, if you guys are organizing such kind of thing, please do not put fire on this. A lot of people are in this hyper frenzied mood these days. And if you see, I said, if there's a voice of desperation in me, I know at the end of the day, as I said, Meiteis, Kukis, Nagas, Northeastern, everybody will suffer if you linger on this. There are implications in the entire Northeast. This is not going to confine to Kukis and Meiteis. If you linger on, check, there are already winds of that. When this expansion of this conflict began, then you will be perpetually caught up in that. So I am saying and requesting all of you, refer to these development issues in an objective fashion, form a committee and investigate. And about this counterclaim and claim about the violence, blame game, please do a Supreme Court inquiry committee monitored by them so that it is possible. And I want to that happen. And I'm speaking these two things as a Meitei and as a consensus individual who feel pain about my friends, my students. They hate each other so much now. They were working together. They're not even able to talk. Why has we...
Yes, Akoijam, I'm going to have to stop you now at this because we are also running short of time.
No, it's I have said it already. I must thank all of you, Maninder, and all of you for organizing this. And I am saying that, please do that if you any sense of desperation. For me, I can keep quiet. Enough, I've sinned. But the more I see the pain, I can't help. But please resolve this. Development issues I've suggested, we go ahead. with this inquiry. And then once we talk, let's talk. Don't have this imperial nostalgia. Don't have this sectarian ideologies. See what is the common ground, what can be done. Only then we can talk.
Absolutely.